These are the waiver wire pickups for week 3. Number 1 on the list is Demarcus Robinson. To say that the Rams are thin at wide receiver would be a massive understatement. They were already down Puka Nacua, who they lost to IR last week due to a knee injury, and they may be without Cooper Kupp moving forward. Kupp injured his ankle before the second half, and he did not return. To make things worse, he was spotted wearing a walking boot after the game. And if he's out, Demarcus Robinson may be the only healthy veteran wide receiver in this group. Robinson ended up finishing the game with 2 receptions for 50 yards. While they may not jump off of the page, he did have 1 red zone look, and he also had a red zone look last week. And if we look at last year, he finished the season pretty strong. Between weeks 13 and 17, he had 319 yards and 4 touchdowns. Good enough to be the WR12 in PPR during that 5-game stretch. My hunch is, with the Rams already starting 0-2, they may keep both of their star wide receivers on the shelf until after their bye in week 6. At this point, I don't see them risking the health of their 2 studs in a potentially lost season. While they're out, I'm expecting Robinson to lead this receiving group. I'm also expecting an uptick in targets for both Tutu Atwell and Tyler Johnson, and for tight end Kobe Parkinson. Robinson's rostered in 42% of leagues. He was already a good pickup last week when Nacua went down, but with this Kupp injury, he's pretty much a must-add in all formats. Moving forward, I see him as a volume-based WR2, and I would consider starting him in deeper leagues. Number 2 on the list is Quinton Johnston. The second-year pro and former first-round pick had arguably his best game as a professional. He caught 5 of 6 targets for 51 yards and 2 touchdowns. And the Chargers are in search of a new number 1 receiver with Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and Austin Eckler no longer being on the team. And I think with what they have invested in Johnston, they're going to give him every opportunity to seize the role. Allen, Williams, and Eckler leave behind 418 targets, and I do expect Ladd McConkey and Josh Palmer to absorb a good chunk of that, but Johnston could easily grab the majority of those, especially if he keeps proving that he can be sure-handed and be a red zone threat. At 6'4", 215, he's actually built pretty similarly to Mike Williams, and he profiles as a deep threat, but I would expect him to be used in the intermediate passing game as well. The one thing I will mention is that I will temper expectations just a little bit. This game was against the Panthers, and this team is pretty much a run-first team now. Through 2 games, Justin Herbert only has 46 passing attempts, which is about half of the attempts he usually has. Nonetheless, he's only rostered in 7% of leagues, and if you're in a deep league or have an extra roster spot, I wouldn't hesitate to grab him, especially if you can afford to wait and see how things unfold over the next few weeks. Number 3 on the list is Alexander Madison. Coming into this year, it seemed like Zamir White would have a stranglehold on the RB1 job in Las Vegas, but over the first 2 weeks, that hasn't quite been the case. Last week, Madison outsnapped Zamir White 36-23, and he had a pretty sizable role. And he actually had a pretty big role both in the passing game and near the goal line. He seems to be the preferred back in those situations. Through these first 2 games, he has 13 touches for 63 yards, but he also has 2 touchdowns, 1 through the air and 1 on the ground. And while he may not get the amount of early down work that White does, his involvement in the passing game and near the goal line should give him some value. While he probably is more of a touchdown or bust type of player, I think he's worth adding just to see if he carves out a bigger role. He's currently rostered in 38% of leagues, and if you're looking for a running back to stash at the end of your bench, you could do a lot worse. Number 4 on the list is Wan'Dale Robinson. Robinson's value is somewhat capped by Malik Neighbors, who is the alpha of this receiving room, but I think Robinson has some value in some deep PPR leagues. In week 1, he led the team with 12 targets, grabbing 6 of them for 44 yards, and this week, while he did take a backseat to Neighbors, he did score a touchdown. He also had 2 receptions and 18 yards, but that should give you an idea of what his ceiling is. With this team being very risk-averse, with Daniel Jones at quarterback, and no longer having Saquon Barkley, they're probably going to continue to rely on the short passing game, which feeds right into Robinson's skill set. Currently, I view him as a low-end WR3/high-end WR4. He may not score all that often, but the targets should be there, giving him just enough of a floor to warrant a pickup in deep PPR leagues. He's currently rostered in 20% of leagues, so if you're in need of a wideout, I would definitely give him a look. Number 5 on the list is Braylon Allen, Breece Hall's backup. He had 9 touches for 56 yards and 2 touchdowns, 1 through the air and 1 on the ground. And while he is an elite handcuff, he may actually have some standalone value. In positive game scripts, he could find himself getting 9 to 10 touches. At 6'1", 235, he profiles as an in-between-the-tackles kind of guy, but he demonstrated that he has pretty good hands today. And I think if he can continue to be efficient with his touches, he's worth a pickup. He's only rostered in 9% of leagues, and he's already an elite handcuff, but like I mentioned, he may have some standalone value. Number 6 on the list is Jaylen Naylor. Naylor's been extremely efficient over the first 2 games. He's caught 4 passes for 75 yards and has scored in each of the first 2 weeks. He has benefited greatly from injuries. Last week, Jordan Addison injured his ankle and left the game, and this week, Justin Jefferson bruised his quad and left the game. and in both situations, he was the first one to step up. Both players are considered day-to-day at this point, but if they continue to miss time, I think he can be a viable WR3. However, when this receiving room does get healthy, he'll probably see a drop-off in his value, and once TJ Hawkinson comes back into the mix, he probably will be drop-worthy. But up until then, I think he's worth an add. He's only rostered in 1% of leagues, and if you're looking to take a flyer on someone, I think he's someone to consider. Number 7 on the list is Andre Iosivas. Iosivas has benefited greatly from T. Higgins being out of the lineup and Jamar Chase coming along slowly. He's been pretty much an every down player, and he's been pretty efficient with his looks. Through the first 2 games, he has 5 receptions for 33 yards and 2 touchdowns. Both of those scores came today. He's really only an add in deeper leagues, and once Higgins does come back, his value will surely take a hit. But I do expect him to settle in as a WR3 of this receiving core moving forward. He's pretty much replacing Tyler Boyd, but I wouldn't be surprised if Jermaine Burton's role also grows as the season goes on, and like we saw today, this team intends to use the tight end a lot more this season. Mike Gesicki and Drew Sample both were involved a lot more, and I wouldn't be shocked to see that be the case moving forward. Iosivas is only rostered in 7% of leagues, and he's kind of a touchdown or bust player, but I think he's worth rostering while Higgins is out. Number 8 on the list is Jaylen Tolbert. Tolbert led the Cowboys in targets today with 9, and he had 82 yards, which was a career best day for him. And I think the mini breakout a lot of people were waiting on may have actually started today. If he can continue to prove that he's reliable, he may alternate with Brandon Cooks as the WR2 on this offense. It will probably take a while before he seizes that role. And I should also mention that he's benefiting from the fact that Jake Ferguson didn't play today. But I think once Ferguson comes back, it'll be interesting to see what his role is. He's only rostered in 2% of leagues, and given that he's playing around 70% of the snaps, I think he's worth an add in deep PPR leagues. And speaking of Jake Ferguson, that brings me to number 9, Luke Schoonmaker. Ferguson missed today's game with a bone bruise and a sprained MCL, and Schoonmaker stepped up pretty admirably. He caught all 6 of his targets for 43 yards, and I think he's worth an add as a low-end TE2 in deeper leagues, at least while Ferguson is out. Number 10 on the list is Jalen Powell. The second-round rookie scored his first touchdown today, and while this team will largely run through Ramondre Stevenson moving forward, I think Powell's role will grow as the season goes on. With this receiving room being uninspiring, I think he can separate himself from the group. At this point, it's pretty much Hunter Henry, and it will be Kendrick Bourne when he comes back. But that third pass catcher role is up for grabs. Polk's pretty widely available, and if you're looking to stash a player that should see his role grow as the season goes on, I would consider picking him up. Lastly, I want to mention a couple of injuries. Isaiah Pacheco went down with an ankle injury today. He's kind of downplayed the severity, but if he misses any time, then I think Samaje Perine and Carson Steele would have some value. Also, Joe Mixon got rolled up on tonight. He did return to the game, but we really won't know the severity of the injury until the next couple of days. If he does miss any time, this could be an upgrade for Dameon Pierce or Cam Akers or even Daria Gumbawale. Those are the waiver wire pickups for week 3. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe and let me know which players you think we should pick up in the comments below.